Well, I do know that those buildings leaked a lot, and you had water standing in a lot of floors sometimes. And I did notice that mosquitoes were breeding in the water, and I ended up getting malaria 4 times. But I could see the mosquitoes actually lighted in and floating in the water and the larvae, and they never could get enough water out to do that. But with the heat, the humidity, by the time a soldier was wounded and he got in an hour later, infection had already began because of the heat and humidity, and the snakes and the spiders and that type thing. And if it got down to 59 degrees, it was cold. You wore your jacket, and the fatigue jacket, and pulled guard duty with fatigue jacket because it just got cold, especially during the monsoon seasons. The monsoon seasons was especially tough with the raining. It'd rain, it would dry up, it would turn hot, steamy, and then go back the next day at the same time. You could almost set your clock by the rain. When I got to Da Nang, I was assigned a receiving area like the emergency room. So I did not work in the operating room there. Operating room, you basically worked until you got all the casualties done, regardless. But typically in the receiving, you had 12-hour shifts. Now, if we had an influx of casualties, you stayed over. You did not get to leave until everything was done and all the patients were taken care of. So 12 hours on, 12 hours off. In addition to that, we had to pull our own guard duty. And so you might work 12 hours and then you might go on guard duty all night. And so then you had to sleep the next day and go back to work the next night. It's either going to work night shift or day shift. And that 12 hours sometimes was mundane. Sometimes it was just terrible casualties, choppers after chopper after chopper. And I can tell you some experiences about that. We had a Marine twin blade. I don't know the number for it, a CH something, or a twin bladed helicopter with held about 40, 50 people. They called it they were bringing us 5 gunshot wounds to the head and the head injuries in. So we took gurneys out there and we're waiting on them. And when the chopper landed, they dropped the tailgate on it, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. When the tailgate dropped down, there was about 12 to 15 Marines piled up on top of each other, dead on the tailgate. And the blood gushed out by the gallons. And we had to walk over those dead bodies to retrieve, to find 5 guys out of about 35 or 40 that was laying in that chopper. And of course, everything was uphill the way the chopper was. And you were stepping on their feet and arms, and they was, you hurt me, no, do it, and all these guys had massive gunshot wounds and fragmentation grenades and all this stuff. And you were searching for 5 guys, and you had to get them out of that helicopter, bring them over those bodies, and then put them on a gurney and take them in. And that bothered me because I stepped on one guy's hand and it hurt, and he said a cuss word, and I said, "Hey, I'm sorry," but it was so noisy you could hear the moans you knew when you stepped on somebody, you could hear the moans, but it's so noisy in there. But the wailing was what got me. And then we took those 5 head wounds off, and then the helicopter land took them over to the rest of them to Naval Sport Activity Hospital to be treated. But it was the influx of casualties that just would not stop. It just wouldn't stop. Well, a lot of shrapnel wounds. There was a lot of malaria. There was mostly we treated not only the Americans but Australians, all the Allies. We treated the South Vietnamese Army soldiers. We treated civilians. We treated VC and MVA. And we had those to show up in our unit to be treated. A lot of civilians at night, there'd be rockets and mortar attacks, and they would come in by car vehicle, sometimes a deuce and a half. They would come in by helicopter, and ambulance, American ambulances brought them in. So we had them running by air, land, and sea, coming in. And we were right on the beach. But there was a lot of malaria, a lot of babies being delivered, a lot of malnutrition. Just they had sick call for not only the soldiers, but for the South Vietnamese as well. Yeah.